Welcome back to Ask the Educator, a podcast for all professionals involved in medical device processing and sponsored by Healthmark Industries. The education team here at Healthmark has 280 years of combined experience in areas ranging from sterile processing, endoscopy, OR, biomed, to hospital and industry leadership. Our goal is to leverage our collective experience to answer one of your questions each episode, giving you the practical tips you need to succeed in the evolving world of device processing. My name is Kevin Anderson, clinical educator here at Healthmark, and I will be your host. Let's get started. All right, welcome back everybody for episode 2 of Ask the Educator. This is Kevin Anderson again, your host with Healthmark Industries here. And again, I am fortunate to be joined with Stephen Kovach for this episode. And before we sort of get into this question, I'd like to set up the question before we get started. So one of the things that we've been thinking about is with the semi-downtime for our operating room partners, now may be a very good time to sort of audit what's on your shelf and make sure that those surgical instruments look and are the way they're supposed to be when they're ready for patient use. So taking a look at perhaps maybe some of the more complex items first, because we want to maybe prioritize our time, we were thinking about discussing arthroscopic shavers. So the question is, for this episode that we want to address is, how do we ensure that proper cleaning is taking place of our arthroscopic shavers? And maybe, Steve, you can start us off on that one.
Yeah, Kevin, you were just saying, unfortunately, right now there's downtime and you can take advantage of this. And even if you don't have downtime, you probably should have some quality process in place where you do some type of tray audits. So how I look at it is, let's go pull some trays that have shavers off the shelf and open them up and start examining them. And how do you examine it? Well, you also need to get your IFU, your instructions for use, and see what it says and start applying that where this would be done on your clean side. So we do know that some of the IFUs say, I'm going to read one here. It's from a handpiece. I won't mention the company. I got it in front of me. It says, visually inspect the handpiece, including all internal surfaces for remaining soil. Use an endoscopy camera or endoscope if necessary to see if the inner surface of the lumen is clean or if any soil remains. And then another one says, inspect the outside of the shaver to make sure there is no damage to it. So right there within the IFU, it's telling you to inspect. And Kevin, you just you've ran a department before. How did you sort of handle this for your staff? How did you set up your tables, or what'd you do, or what kind of tools did you use?
So one of the things that we invested in at my former facility was the use of a borescope for each workstation, because we did a lot of orthopedics, so we thought it was necessary to have them at every workstation.
Wow, yeah, it is something really interesting because, for the shaver, going and getting a old bronchoscope or something small enough to go inside a shaver is fairly impractical. And we know people were doing that at the very beginning, but you need a borescope or an inspection scope with a diameter to go look inside, but you also need magnification on the outside to look if there's anything. Your eyes can't pick up everything. So you need a couple different tools to do it properly. But there are departments, we've done surveys in the past where there's still over 30% of departments that don't have adequate visual inspection tools, whether it's a handheld for the external or one of those, like a boom magnifying glass, Kevin?
The desk-mounted magnifier, lighted magnifier, yeah.
Yeah, And that should be at every workstation. And then you have a borescope to look into it. So there is enough guidance that they should be looking at it. So they should not have that issue when the operating room opens it up and say, whoa, there's something left in here, or it's not running right. What's going on? Or as you say, we're talking about people on the clean side. They're inspecting it with this borescope to make sure that there's nothing in it, and
yeah, I think that's really important, because if you're thinking about the end user and what they're going through in their day, how are they going to test to see if their arthroscopic shaver is truly patient ready? How are they going to know that it's completely clean on the inside? They have no way of checking that. All they can see is the indicator that you put in there. Because one of the questions I've heard is, why isn't it mandated to have a borescope? Because people are looking for justification to purchase these items. But the reality is, if the IFU says you need to use it, then it is mandated.
You mentioned something, Kevin, and this is where the vagueness comes in, because some IFUs will just say inspect. Well, if they don't give you any more direction, you then go to your standards and it says inspect internal and external, if there's lumens and so on. And that gives you the backing not only to purchase, but to do it. But like you say, even if there's downtime now because of what's going on, but even later on, it should be part of their quality process, pull so many out every quarter or every month. But there's something else that I think we like the medical device reprocessing professional to remember, is you want to document it. Now, you've used a lot of the computer systems that are out there. Unfortunately, I'm not as good at them with you for the instrument tracking, but I think you could be able to put a task or something on there, like you did inspect it and you check it off or something. Is that how it works, where you can get that documentation to show that I was the assembly person and I did it? You think that's possible in a lot of these systems that are out there, Kevin?
Yeah, I there's definitely ways to build in documentation and sort of customize it to your facility and how you want to do things. If we had a very specific thing we wanted taken care of on a particular instrument or a particular tray, we could add a checkbox, or a comment box that we wrote into our procedure that had to be either checked or physically written on as part of the documentation. But yeah, there is opportunity there for people to hardwire the documentation aspect of it, especially with a borescope that will take pictures or video, which is a huge advantage if you're going to, try and educate your team, and you find something. Nothing illustrates your point more than video or photographic evidence. So,
well, that just remind me of something, that being able to take pictures and save them, whether you get a brand new shaver or you sent one out for repair, you can inspect it incomingly to make sure when it's brand new, what defects or it's okay. I do have a real life true story here. I can't say who the person or the account was, but they actually sent some shavers out for repair. They got a borescope. They came back and they checked it, and there was rust in the fork barrel area, and they sent it back, and they told the place they didn't fix everything and didn't inspect it, and it came back. And the reason they had it is they had a picture of what a brand new one should look like. So again, having a system that allows you to keep the pictures both good and bad to compare, like you say, to teach your staff. They say learning is 80% visual. So having a system that has those features is something that would be beneficial down the line to train staff. So I liked how you brought that in to make sure you can save and do pictures. I think that's a very good feature if you're doing any type of inspection. So
yeah, absolutely. And I want to say that, in just not to be, make people fearful or anything like that, but there is real risk involved in this. And I believe some of this actually, the bore scope examination came about because there were actual surgical site infections, correct? Am I right?
yes,
Yeah.
oh yes, there was. It was in Texas. Won't name any facilities, but
Yeah.
that was a tipping point, and that's been over 11 years. And for us to hear that there are places that still don't have a borescope, and it's not just the arthroscopy shaver. There are micro abraders and shavers that are out there that are very similar, that are used in neuro and other places, that I believe when you read the IFU, it'll say inspect. Visual inspection, both internally and externally, is important. I know we're just talking about the shavers, but it can go to other things.
Yeah.
But Kevin, this raises a question. So now I'm on the clean side assembly, and I'm finding that these things are dirty and there's chunks in there. What am I going to do now?
And we'll have to address that question on the next episode. Just to recap what we covered in the show, we addressed the question, how do I ensure proper cleaning of arthroscopic shavers? We then talked about the need to audit your ready-for-use shavers, and that you need to know the IFU and what is required to inspect. Lastly, we discussed the need to use a bore scope to thoroughly inspect and document your findings. Please join us next time when we pick up where we left off and talk about ensuring proper cleaning of shavers on the decontam side. And remember, if you have a question you would like us to answer on the show, you could submit it to our email address at asktheeducator@hmark.com. That's asktheeducator@hmark.com. Thank you for listening. All opinions expressed on this show are those of the presenters. Before using any medical device, it is important to review the device manufacturer's instructions for use.